it felt really good to just say, no, we're gonna make our own comfort priority on this record. And even if that means scrapping everything and starting all over again and losing the time and losing the money, and it was just worth it, because Dave and I felt like we were in a place together that we were like, this is the best we've ever been. This is the most on top of our we've ever been, and we can handle this. And it's really important that we get this right for ourselves and also for our fans, to be able to say, hey, this is where we are, and we are firing on all cylinders.
Hello and welcome to the Release Day Series podcast. I'm your host, Alex Heward. If you know anything about the music of the brothers Landreth, then you know all about their emotionally stirring songwriting, soulful instrumentation, and music that, as my friend Brent Jensen puts it, makes your skin vibrate. Their JUNO award-winning debut album, Let It Lie, was released in 2013, followed up in 2019 by their sophomore album, 87, and unfortunately due to the pandemic, didn't quite get the attention that it deserved. Over 2 years later, Joey and Dave are back with their third and perhaps most intentional body of work, Come Morning, that was released on May 13th, 2022. As Joey puts it, the overarching theme of the album is hope, with many of these songs leaning into the tough stuff, from processing emotional trauma to finding strength on the other side. Forced to keep a tight circle due to COVID restrictions, Joey and Dave work together in near seclusion, pulling long hours in the studio and building songs one instrument at a time. Eventually, joined by some wonderful voices, musicians, and producers throughout the record, the songs that make up Come Morning further cement the brilliance of their songwriting while demonstrating the evolution of the brothers' production and the magic they discovered during these darker times. Broadcasting from the traditional territory of the First Peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Inuit, and Métis peoples, this is my conversation with the brothers Landreth. Joey, Dave, welcome to the show. Guys, first hard-hitting question. Has anybody ever introduced you live as the bros Landreth?
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, we're not picky about it.
No.
At the end of the day, if you as long as you're chatting with us, man, it's all good.
Totally. Well, congratulations on the release of the album. Again, it's the third album built and produced over, again, a pretty tough time. How does it feel to be back, talking about a new record and touring?
It's kind of surreal at this point, which is, we've spent our whole lives traveling and touring, making and playing on records, and to kind of be in this place where getting back to work and going on the road is kind of foreign is weird. But we're excited, man. We're really, really excited. And obviously everybody has been through the same pandemic. It's been wild and hard and challenging and really uprooting in a lot of ways for some people. But the record kind of exists despite all of that stuff. And we didn't want to make a pandemic record. And there's lots of people that made really beautiful pandemic records. And we just really wanted to make a record that happened to be during a pandemic, which, came with its own challenges, which definitely shaped the record. But it wasn't necessarily like, okay, let's do the COVID album thing.
And were any of these songs kind of written or in the works prior to the pandemic? Because again, I know it's not a pandemic album, and I think you guys have mentioned that this album would have been made one way or the other, just maybe it might have been made a little differently.
Yeah, that's always been true of our records. Every time we sit down to make one, we panic because we don't have enough songs, and we start smashing our head against the wall trying to write songs at the last minute, and we always end up pulling from old work, retooling old demos or voice notes. You kind of plumb the depths of whatever you have to get this stuff together, and that's not to say that these songs aren't really inspired and lackadaisical or anything. But when we go to sort of get that source material and start, there's always this mad dash of oh shit, we don't have enough music. So there was a couple of songs that Joey brought to the table that were basically done, mostly finished, and that we rearranged, slightly or just built on the demos that he had. And then there was a handful that we had written very deliberately. We had more time to write, with the pandemic being what it was. We had more time than we've ever had since the first one, realistically. There is that adage that you have all the time in the world to make your first record, and then you got about 10 minutes to make every subsequent one. But this was kind of like going back to the first one, in that there was quite a lot of time to make sure that we had the songs that we were really excited about. So yeah, a mix. Some existed, some we made just for this.
You know, you can tell with these songs that there's more than just, you know, a couple months worth of emotion and songwriting and feeling put into them. Now, how did the production differ from this? You know, we talk about it, you listen to it as well. It's awesome. Like, you know, with the right headphones, with headphones on, you really are immersed in a lot of the music and the instruments that are played around here. And, you know, that's what I've been loving about Apple Music with their spatial audio, is this the way that they've got the instruments playing all around you. And you really feel that in this record. How did the production and the of it and mixing of it differ from 87 and Let It Lie?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a big part of the departure kind of comes from that there was a big chunk of these tunes that were going to go on my next solo record. And I had been working and recording from the dining room of my apartment in Winnipeg. I had set up a little home studio there, and our spare bedroom was like a little workshop and sometimes ISO booth. And I really loved working there. And I had this idea of like, I kind of just want to make a whole record in this room and maybe sample or sequence drums and kind of do something really, really creative just for the sake of capturing this room, especially because at that time also, or sort of halfway through that process, we bought a house and it was like, okay, I'm going to be leaving. So I knew that my time in there was coming to an end. So I started thinking of ways that I could sort of pay homage to this room. And a bunch of these songs were kind of floating around in existence. And then Dave and I started talking about what our next record would look like together. And, you know, the first question so far in all of our records that we've made is, what you got for songs? And so I said, well, I've got these small handful of tunes. I kind of imagine that they would go on a solo record, but like, if you like them and you think that there's a way to work them in, let's do it. And, you know, historically, you know, from the moment that I had a solo career, there became this sort of criteria for what was a Brothers Landreth song and what was a Joey Landreth song. And I think at some point it started to form how we looked at both projects, and it kind of was like, well, the Joey Landreth thing is like where I get to be a little more experimental and I get to kind of go off into space for a bit. And the Brothers Landreth tends to be more of a traditional kind of group. It's more of a traditional roots band, you know, guitar, bass, drums, keys, nothing too adventurous production wise. I like a lot of background vocals. That might be the only thing that sort of is slightly outside of that idiom in terms of what Americana is by definition. But for this record, we kind of started, we had to ask the question, like, well, what does this actually mean? Like, what are these boundaries that we're putting, and are they appropriate, and do they make sense, and are they conducive for making art? And I think we kind of collectively decided that, well, no, this is kind of dumb, because the only definition that needs to be there is it music that Dave and I made together? And if the answer is yes, then it's a Brothers Landreth record.
Cool.
So we kind of reformed how we looked at and defined those boundaries. And so I think that is really reflective in the production, because places where we might normally go, I don't know if that belongs, we went, fuck it. Like, I think it sounds cool. Do you think it sounds cool? If you think it sounds cool, I think it sounds cool, then it's cool. Let's do it. So it was a real exercise in that. And then, you know, we tracked the drums in a way that we've never done before. We, you know, Dave and our original drummer, Ryan Voth, have this very, very special relationship that, you know, it's important that they're in the same room and they can make eye contact, and sort of they have this really incredible way of communicating through music together. And when it became clear, because of COVID restrictions, we weren't going to be able to record that way, it kind of freaked us out, because we were like, well, how are we going to make this record if we can't get Dave and a drummer in the same room? Like, this is not going to work. But we decided to take a risk and sort of fly some drums in from outside of our community. And in that thought process, we were like, well, if we're going to hire somebody from somewhere else, like, let's call one of our heroes and see if they would come and play on it. And so that's kind of how Aaron Sterling wound up on the record. And it just wound up being more of an extension of that kind of letting go of these traditional boundaries of how we make records. And what we found in the results were, instead of something that was going to make us uncomfortable and push us super hard out of our comfort zone, it wound up being this, like, you know, you kind of like nervously open the door and looking into this whole new space, and it's like a playground. And so when we got our first tracks back from Aaron Sterling, we knew right away, okay, well, this is not how we normally make records, but this is going to be dope. We are going to have a lot of fun with this.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of pieces. You said a lot of you guys kind of reworked, you kind of recorded, and then kind of did you scrap anything, and then kind of go back and just kind of had that time really, right, to try, you know?
Well, we actually, the record had a full false start.
Oh, wow.
Before we got to the record proper, we brought in a drummer. We did 2 or 3 days of recording and cut the entire record. And then over the course of the next couple of days, going through the drum tracks and going through everything, just realized we didn't get it. Like we did not capture the essence of the music. We weren't in the right headspace.
A couple of the tunes were recorded at the wrong tempo.
Got the wrong tempo. Like we didn't get it. And we scrapped everything. And it was really, you know, we didn't languish in that for very long, but there was a couple of days of like being seriously defeated. It was, and the sessions were rough. Like we knew that we weren't connecting with it, and we were hoping that, you know, maybe we'll hear it with fresh ears. And yeah, we got through this, and we went and had a meeting with our manager, and we're just like, man, we didn't get it. What are we going to do? And he's like, you just start again. It'll be fine. And it was. But in that moment, there was a couple of days of just being like, oh man.
Well, was that scary? Because I know that, you know, when recording 87, it was kind of tough for you guys to sort of bring that album together. Were you starting to feel maybe like that was happening again? I know you had taken some time away and you kind of were allowed to give yourself some space, but I don't know, was there ever kind of fear of it having the same experience?
No, because we knew we suffered through the making of 87. It was just a really emotionally tough time. And like, I'm proud of that record. I have no resentment toward that record or the personnel who helped us make it. But it was just a really hard time for us. And we were at a point in our lives where it was like, we're road dogs. We can handle discomfort. We can stay up all night and drive all day. And we can do this. We can power through this discomfort. We can power through this pain and this grief, because Dave and I were like, man, it was a heavy time for us, and I think we were in the middle of making this record while simultaneously kind of grieving the loss of one another and trying to put things back together and just not quite getting there, but we pushed through that anyway. And a lot changed between then and now, and our relationship has never been bad, but we just, you know, we sat down, we talked through the tough stuff, we kept talking through the hard stuff, and we really got on the same page in a way that we've never been before. And I want to point out, it was never like, man, I can't work with this guy, he's too difficult. It was just, we both kind of had broken hearts over different things, and you know, in our older age, we're learning you got to work on that shit. You can't just sweep it under the rug. And so when we were working on this record and we kind of found ourselves in a similar place, we were just like, we're not going to do this again. We're not just going to plow through and swallow our feelings and ignore them and just put out another record that hurts every time we listen to it. Let's get this right, and everybody will understand. Nobody will take it personally. Like, hey guys, love you. We just didn't get it. And it's, you know, like, it's as much on me as it is on anyone else. And it felt really good to just say, no, we're going to make our own comfort priority on this record. And even if that means scrapping everything and starting all over again and losing the time and losing the money, and it was just worth it, because Dave and I felt like we were in a place together that we were like, this is the best we've ever been. This is the most on top of our shit we've ever been, and we can handle this. And it's really important that we get this right for ourselves, and also for our fans, to be able to say, hey, this is where we are, and we are firing on all cylinders. So yeah, it was definitely scary for a minute, but as soon as we kind of went, no, let's not forget what our mission statement is here, and then it was like, all right, well, I guess we're starting from scratch.
Yeah, I think you feel that maturity, especially in this album. You know, we talk about, you listen to Let It Lie and 87, and there's some great blues and there's some great, solos and things like that. And on this one, I think there's just like this maturity that's come from those and those life experiences between, yourselves, and obviously being able to get into, having your own studio to sort of take your time with and develop the sound that you wanted. Do you guys see this as like an evolution, as sort of like a recognition of who you guys are now with this album?
I think what it is a really honest snapshot of where we are, but in a sense, even where we were when we made that record. I don't know that this record would even sound the same today if we made it. But I do know that when we put it down and we sort of finalized, cut the last take and listened to everything and decided we were done, that we all kind of looked at it and went, yep, we took the Polaroid. That's the moment. And it feels honest, and we left it all on the table. To say that that's like a discovery of a sound, I think it's another step forward on this path of like, we will always kind of be looking to figure out what our sound is today, what that's going to be tomorrow. Because, we're about to hit the road. And one of my favorite things is that this band our first show is June 3rd. And then we're going to be done tour on November 5th.
Wow.
And that band is going to be different. It's not going to be the same band. We won't even be the same people. Those experiences that we're going to have on the road, that we're going to get through on stage, that band's going to sound notably different on the last day than it does. So as long as we're always committed to that sort of exploration and trying to be the most honest, integral artists that we can be at any given point, that to me is really the pursuit.
Yeah, it's track listing, sequencing. Sequencing is a big thing for me. I love that. Going back and listening to old records as well, sequencing. You start with Stay, What in the World, Drive All Night, Shame. It's a really nice. Obviously, there's more songs, but it's a really nice sequence of songs. What was it? What was the process of deciding the track order of this album? Because it's an album. It's definitely a moment in time. It's not just a whole handful of singles, right? This is a whole body of work. What was the process of organizing these songs?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of tackle track listing the same way that we tackle writing a set list. There has to be moments of dynamic. So like making sure that there's not a bunch of ballads right next to each other, making sure that the bangers aren't all in one spot. And, historically, the Brothers Landreth are not known for
bangers.
Lots of bangers. So, yeah. I mean, even our bangers are not
soft bangers.
They're not that banging. I feel like that's a euphemism I'm misusing. But I don't know. Tear me apart in the comment section, I guess. So we kind of have to be pretty deliberate about where the more up-tempo tunes go, and we knew pretty early on that we wanted Stay to set the pace, and we wanted to come in with this new, Stay is not a like, holy shit, what band is this? But it is a different sound, and we wanted to kind of say, hey, check this out. This is what we're doing, and I think the rest of the track listing kind of unfolded in a pretty emotional way, just kind of following our feelings around and making sure that, things led into each other. And on the first record, I think there was like probably 6 or 7 different drafts of the track listing, but this one came together a little bit quicker, and we really didn't mess with it all that much. There might have been a little bit of massaging, maybe swap this song for that song and see how that feels. But we wanted it to feel cohesive, but we also wanted it to tell the story of the last 5 years, and that's kind of what this record really does. And it digs into a lot of our processing of trauma and grief and trying to celebrate it and I think this is a bit of like, the same way that we approached what I had sort of said about like, we don't want to sweep things under the rug. We want to look at things head on. This record is kind of like that. This is us going, it's actually not so bad to look your fears in the face and let them make you feel things, because that's humanity. And that's what we want to celebrate on this record. And we just want to share a little piece of a little corner of our own humanity with people. And it feels really good.
And I love the way you guys do it too, even through the first 2 albums and into this. I just Let It Lie obviously is a big tune. Greenhouse, absolutely love Greenhouse. Marianne, and Made Up Mind, Firecracker, and just to name a few, but just the way that you guys kind of visually represent emotions or emotionally, like it just, there's something about how you put those lyrics, quiet behind the slamming door, and sun going down on me and you. There's just these things in these lyrics, and that make you really, I think, identify as well. Like just, I don't, in a way that's not super obvious, but it's like, wow, you can actually, the way that you're painting the lyrics, that's what I'm feeling. Sometimes I think people can't put into words, and I think you guys do a great job of doing that. And After the Rain and Come Morning, I think, are a couple of awesome examples as well throughout this album of how you continue to do that. Is that just natural when it comes to songwriting, putting emotions, into words like that?
No, I think we fight for it.
Yeah.
Often. And occasionally they kind of come to you. I know that's cheesy to say, but it is true. I think sometimes the spectrum of songwriting, there's the song that you really break a sweat for, and every lyric and every arrangement choice is something that you really toil over and try and explore. And then there are songs that you sit down and they really feel like, and I think a lot of songwriters can agree to this, even if they're also embarrassed about the cliche, but you kind of sit down, they just appear. I find that often those ones are the ones that have that kind of impact, because if you're chasing a melody in your head and you're thinking about where your hands are on the guitar or where the chords are, there's this kind of fun thing that can happen when you stop thinking about what you're trying to say and the words just appear. They just sort of land on that melody. And sometimes you can be kind of even surprised yourself at some of the things you might say. But then the opposite happens, where like you have a songwriting session that feels like you're going to work and you are grinding it out, trying to find just the right way of capturing that idea. And both are valid, and both, can yield really satisfying results. And you don't really know which one you're going to get until you start.
Getting into some of the release of this album, obviously you took your time and kind of really figuring out how to produce it and make it come together. Did those guys over at Birthday Cake Records start really like, putting the hammer down on you to kind of get, your singles together and really like start, like once the album was finished, what was it like when it came to thinking about putting out, because you guys released singles, the first 3 tracks are singles from the album, and so I'm just kind of intrigued as to now when you start thinking about releasing this thing, how quickly you had to get on everything that comes after recording.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Birthday Cake Records is Dave and I.
Yeah.
So for those who are not catching the inside joke, I was like, listen, Dave, this is your A&R guy, Joe, and you got to get on this shit. We need to make some money fast. No,
you guys been off the grid for too long. All right, we got to get it back on the radar.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got to come back from La La Land there, buddy. I mean, that's the whole reason we started the record label. Was we were spoiled. Our first record deal was incredible and run by a pair of guys who really gave a shit about what we were doing and were not afraid to put their weight behind everything we did. And when that relationship moved on, and I went on to sign my first record deal, I was like, hey, wait, where are my champions who are just like letting me do whatever I want and cutting checks left, right, and center just to make my dreams come true? And instead I'm having these people going, yeah, we don't get it. I'm like, what do you mean you don't get it? I'm doing the same thing I did before. So we started the label because we realized that what we had with Slate Creek Records was really rare. And we learned kind of the hard way that nobody really cares about what we're doing more than we do, with the exception of Jim and Garth. And so we kind of figured, well, we're smart people. Dave and I and Stu, we've done a lot of do-it-yourself kind of stuff with the music business. So that's kind of where Birthday Cake, the concept for it started. At least the label side. Dave and Stu have been dreaming up Birthday Cake Media for a long time, but the label side kind of came from that philosophy. And while we did have all the time in the world for this record, like Dave said, but we did eventually wear that out. And Stu, our manager, was like, I mean, I know I said take your time, but
Let's go.
it's like looking like the pandemic is she's about to wrap up there, boys, and we got to get the old rubber on the road here. So we did eventually get that note from essentially ourselves.
Right before we started putting out this record, we actually hired a label manager for Birthday Cake, which was a really huge step for the business because it allowed Stu and I and Joey to take this sort of step back and put a very capable person. And the person we hired has never been a label manager, has never worked for a record label, is an artist that we love and a musician that we love who's just really, really smart. And we put him in place. And this is true always of the company, is that we kind of put ourselves forward as a bit of a guinea pig for things. But we put Bucky on the case with this record, and he launched a really, really fun, really concentrated campaign behind it, and we're super, super happy with the way it rolled out.
And how did you determine those first 3 songs to be the ones that you wanted to put out first?
Much deliberation, actually.
Yeah, there was I think we knew that Stay was going to be a single, and we had some other feelings, but we hemmed and hawed over the last couple tunes, and it was really about how can we best set up this record for folks so that they know what they're getting into, they know what to expect, and there are going to be examples of kind of all the little flavors. I mean, in hindsight, it's kind of like, an overture for an orchestra, for like a symphony. There's like all the little melodies sort of condensed into one spot that's like, hey, guess what? These are the things to check out. Okay, now the show is starting. And that's kind of, I think, what we wound up doing accidentally with choosing the singles, was like, here's a little taste of all of the new things we're doing, and then the lead track before the record comes out will make people go, oh, okay, these guys are still the same band. So it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's cool. You do get a little bit of everything. Yeah, and I think Drive All Night is a great example of something that's like just a little bit different, I would say, from what you guys are used to hearing from you guys. But you also had to do a radio edit for this song. Is that tough to do? You're like, no, this is the song. Is it like the Tom Petty Into the Great Wide Open? Like, no, this is the music video. It's 14 minutes long. Like, how do you feel about cutting something down?
I mean, we had to do a radio edit on my first solo record, and we delivered the radio edit, and it was still 6 minutes long. And I remember local CBC was like, we'd love to play this, but we need a radio edit. It was like, no, this is a radio edit. Yeah, the other one is 8 minutes long. But for Drive, we knew that if we played by those rules, that the song would have as much an opportunity out in the world as it possibly could. And that's really important because we're so proud of this record, and we worked really hard on it, and it means a lot to us. So when Bucky kind of came and said, I think we should do a radio edit because I think it'll help push this tune, and some of the PR people are kind of saying the same thing, was like, okay, I mean, I didn't want to do that, but if you guys think that it's going to help, then absolutely we'll do it. So in a way, there's always a little bit of pushback when somebody's like, hi, artist, I think you should do this with your art. Yeah. And there's always this like urge to go, but we've also been around this industry long enough to know that sometimes you do actually have to just trust the people who know what the hell they're doing. And I think that also is kind of one of the beauty things about working with having Bucky as our label manager, is because he is an artist first, and he knows what kind of ask that is. So it's not like he's coming to us and going like, I don't know, just shave off a couple minutes. Like he knows that it's like, no, this like that, those last 3 minutes fucking mean something to me. He knows that when he's saying, hey, this is going to be good. So I trust that.
And I think we recognize too, like when we put the single out, we did it as like a double single or whatever you want to call that. Like we put out the original version, like the record version, and then we added the single. So, and interestingly enough, even though we pushed the radio edit to all the retailers and stuff as like, hey, check this out, they wound up all the playlisting stuff that happened added the long version with the extended outro, which I thought was really cool, because in a lot of ways, we talk about these editorial playlists functioning like a new radio service, and to know that didn't scare anybody off, it made it up on some pretty significant playlists too, and not buried at the bottom. They were right up there, and people were listening through it and not skipping it, and it's a good indication that I think that there's a lot of space for that now, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of it feels a little bit like a return to yesteryear of, I don't remember a time in my lifetime where music was so artfully driven, and some of the stuff that I love the most that is getting played, one of my favorite artists is this guy named Ethan Greska, and he is bizarre. And he was on all the late night shows, and people are totally getting it, and I love that. And I think it's a sign of more things to come, and that era of everybody lamenting that artful music is gone. I think that leaf is turning, and I'm really excited about what is happening in the music business worldwide right now.
You guys have been surrounded by creatives and songwriters your entire life. What is it like to have a graphic designer part of the family and on the team to take the idea, the thoughts of album artwork kind of off your hands?
It's very, very convenient, and we're very, very lucky. I mean, your Alex is speaking about my wife, Roberta.
That's correct.
Roberta Landreth.
Sorry, I didn't even say it. I was just saying, Roberta Landreth, award-winning graphic designer.
For the listeners at home. My wife has done the graphic design for everything that we've done from day one. She has more music awards than I do by a country
Long
mile.
shot, yeah.
And sorry, Joe, I just stepped on your cord.
How dare you?
Oh God.
It's here we go. Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go.
You always do this.
Answer the question.
It's been wonderful. I mean, coming to understand that what we do as musicians is only part of our ability to tell the story. It is the biggest part of it, recording the music. There's all these other opportunities to create windows into the experience of the stories that we're trying to tell. You can make music videos, which we've just started experimenting with on this release. We've made more music videos for this than we've made for anything ever that we've done.
Wow. And
it's been really fun. Every time we do that, you add an element to the music that gives opens another pathway into hearing these songs. And with Roberta's artwork, every time she does something, I find that my relationship with those songs changes. Like when you say 87, I think of the album artwork first.
Yeah.
Like I have that, I see it in my head, and and it feels so appropriate. With this new record, she really, really dug deep for it. Like I watch her work, and she is one of the hardest working person I've ever met. And she went for this, and she dug really, really deep for it. And she created this world in the artwork that brings in all this iconography from the band. So like personal touches, or, there's references in there to our children, to our homes. So these different stories that are important to the history of the band, stuff that, also, many people won't have any context for, but when you see it, it just adds this interesting dynamic to it. It's like her rationale for the way she built it and the way it enhances the story of the record is super fun. Yeah, she's immeasurably talented, and lifts the whole thing and just takes it over to this other level. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, you're right. There's elements that are happening, but they all work so well together, and it does so greatly for this album cover as well. It's just, you could tell there's pieces of gold that there's something happening in this artwork, and you could spend hours looking at it, dissecting it, picking it apart, and making it whatever kind of story you want to make it. And it's just, I think it just also rings true with the songs you guys write as well. Yeah. It also makes for like creating awesome merch. You guys have like some really cool merch ideas and things coming out, amazing t-shirts. You guys have always had great t-shirt designs and things like that. I actually clicked on an ad on Facebook, and now I just keep coming up. So whoever's doing your online marketing, great job, because now you guys just keep coming up, and it's not a bad thing.
Shout out to Signal Noise Marketing.
Good, nice.
For your music marketing needs, go see David Schellenberg.
Touring, you guys are getting back out there. We'll just wrap up on this. That's got to be great. You going all around Canada? That's the plan?
Canada, US, and Europe right now.
And the UK, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a lot. We've got a lot. I mean, we're still, it's far from the busiest year we've ever had, but it's going to be a good sort of reintroduction of the traveling life, and especially after the last couple of years. And Dave and I both have new little kiddos at home, so it's like we're wanting to leave less and less.
Yeah.
So it's the appetite will be good, or our appetite is, this will satiate it certainly. But man, it is so exciting. I mean, after the last couple of years we've had, hell yeah, I'm pumped to get back on the road.
That's awesome. A set list is that, like, how do you look at the set list for something like this now? And it's that, like, still albums 1 and 2, mostly albums 3. Obviously, it's the Come Morning tour, but how are you looking at that?
We're gonna play the whole record down.
Nice.
Not in order.
Not in order, but we're gonna play everything off the record and all the favorite tunes off of the other records. And are we doing any covers? Yeah, 2 covers. We got 2 covers in the set list.
Oh yeah. We won't spill the beans, but we've it's pretty fun because this March tour got canceled, and we were supposed to start sort of in March and then go through the fall. We wound up with basically 3 months off. And instead of sitting around playing video games or whatever, it's not something we do. I don't know why I said that. That's not a thing. We got into the studio every day, and we rehearsed in the morning for about 3 or 4 hours. And we've done that for the last 2.5 months. And so we've had a chance to explore every nook and cranny of this set list, build it super deliberately, rehearse the shit out of these songs. This band sounds so good. This is the most excited I think we've been about a band.
Awesome.
Definitely the most prepared we've ever been. That's for sure.
Yeah. Plenty of time for that too. Preparing. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about your brand new album, Come Morning. Best of luck on the tour, and just have a blast.
Thanks, Alex.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Alex.
You can discover more podcast episodes as well as our limited video series on our website, www.releasedaseries.com. And if you'd like to support the show, we've added that option to the website as well. Send us $1, $3, $5, whatever you'd like. Any support helps. But most importantly, we appreciate you listening and sharing the podcast.